And I will be sharing some time this afternoon when Ms. MacLeod comes back to finish off the 44 minutes, okay? First of all, I'm kind of disappointed that I sat the other day, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wanted you to hear this. I sat the other day through probably the most painful speech of my life listening to Minister Sandals and the parliamentary assistant deliver their lead-off, and they're not even here today to hear my speech. Like, come on, this is unbelievable. Do they not care any more about this bill?
Stop the clock. The member for Mississauga-Streetsville on a point of order.
Speaker, my esteemed colleague from Simcoe North knows that in the course of debate it is not parliamentary to refer to either the presence or the absence of a member, and in fact he referred to both the presence or non-presence of a minister and an assistant. I would ask the Speaker to enforce our accepted decorum.
I recognize the member's point of order, and he's accurate, and I'll ask the member to please keep to the debate.
I forgot all about that. I'm so sorry. I can't refer to the fact that the minister's not here. I'm sorry. My apologies. My apologies. But I listened to her the other day. Talk about painful. Anyhow, I wanted to pick up on in a few areas here. And the other day, Mr. Speaker, the other day when we spoke yesterday morning, that was prior to the announcement of the Ombudsman on his report, and the report ended up being called, and I hope this is not a prop, I know it's probably illegal, but it's called Careless About Childcare. Now I know why they wanted to jump out in front of the legislation of Bill 10, because they knew this report, which is basically a condemnation of everything this government has done with education with respect to childcare in the last 12 years. So they have had 12 years to fix the daycare system in the province of Ontario, and really and truly they've done very little, and in fact it's basically very, very negative response or position against the Ministry of Education. So then all of a sudden, in the debate, we had the Minister of Education and the parliamentary assistant, and they both, and he's not here either, but okay.
This will be my last warning to you. I mean, you know the rules. You've been here a very long time.
I know. Sorry, I forgot again. But the fact of the matter was, they kept referring to the speedy passage of Bill 10. We had to get this done. We have to get this done quickly, and they said that, of course, for the media, and they said it because they knew that afternoon the Ombudsman report would come out condemning the government, and then they turned around after the Ombudsman report came out. We seen messages from the minister. They're working on so many recommendations. They've already implemented this. They've implemented that. Everything's wonderful. And, let's get this bill passed through the House. Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm honored to be the critic for education. And I've been working extremely hard in this portfolio, meeting with stakeholders from right across our province. And I've met with a lot of stakeholders, Mr. Speaker, who absolutely think they detest this piece of legislation. Absolutely detest it. It's a job killer, and it does nothing for public safety of the people we treasure the most, our children. That's the problem we have. And so let me just read a couple of I'm going to do some reading here on some of the things that I wanted to point out in the Ombudsman's report, but I want to make sure that we're clear that the Ombudsman really didn't agree that the bill should pass this next few weeks. He wants all these things implemented, of course, as quickly as possible. But I'll read a couple of things in here. On his executive summary, section 12, as well, the ministry neglected to engage parents in the enforcement process and tended to avoid them altogether. These are the parents of the 350,000 kids that are impacted. They weren't engaged. Okay. The ministry has not undertaken sufficient steps to educate parents, caregivers, or the public about the requirements of the Day Nurseries Act and the important health, safety, and child welfare purposes underlying the legislation. That was by Andre Moran, the Ombudsman of Ontario. The next point he makes, the Ministry of Education is just one in a line of ministries to have who've had responsibility for administering the Day Nurseries Act. Since taking on this role, it has initiated improvements to its operational practices and policies, including development of a dedicated enforcement unit to respond to complaints about unlicensed daycare operators. However, the Ministry's efforts are too little, too late. In my opinion, it's delayed, inconsistent, and incomplete response to complaints and concerns relating to the unlicensed child care providers is unreasonable and wrong under the Ombudsman's Act. That's just a few, Mr. Speaker. I can go on. This book, how thick this book is, on recommendations and concerns that the Ombudsman has had with the work of the Ministry of Education up to now. And what the Ministry of Education wants to do is make, on a Friday, here we did it first of all yesterday morning. They split our lead-off time. We're at the end of the week now, and I'm assuming they're trying to speed this up. So what we're asking, one of our key messages from our party, and what we're saying to our stakeholders across the provinces, we want, because it's taken 12 years to get to this stage, because we've had 12 years of this painful government, so we've had 12 years. Now we've got, surely to God, we can wait 7 weeks and do the consultations across the province during the winter recess. Because remember, we are back here the day after Family Day, and I have letters here from people right across the province, from Lively, from Thunder Bay, from Newmarket, from Windsor, from Ottawa, right across the province. These are private daycare operators who are very, very disturbed about this legislation, and they want an opportunity to attend committee hearings on this particular issue. So I'm asking the Minister, and I'm asking the Parliamentary Assistant and the Ministry of Education, and particularly the Premier's office, who controls it all, that we do want those things. We want those committee hearings in the winter months. Second of all, we'll start a petition right away. We'll be reading that petition into the House here, so that petition will call on province-wide consultations and input on the committee hearings, which would be scheduled for sometime in what I hope would be scheduled for sometime in the winter. Now, just why I bring that up, Mr. Speaker, is there has been some consultation done on the bill up to this date, and I wanted to tell you the percentage of people. There were 400, and the Minister brought this up as well. I believe it was a total of 69% of the participants in the community sessions were from the child care agencies, and 31 from parents. Nobody was notified from the private daycare operators of the province. Nobody. And they make up, like I said, like 300,000 people, 300 children they look after. They were not consulted on this. So we can't say for 1 second that there was a thorough consultation done on this particular bill. And so as we move forward, as our party moves forward, we certainly want to make sure that our daycare providers are giving a fair and ample opportunity to make good comments and positive comments. And of course, our party wants to make a number of amendments to this particular bill when the opportunity comes up. I want to carry on now, Mr. Speaker, with I'm pleased some time for Ms. MacLeod here. With the next stage, I got so many speeches here, it's not funny. Here we go. Okay, so I left off the other day, and I only got 15 minutes in the other day, so I left off to briefly recap. Should Bill 10 pass with its proposal to amend the number and age of ratios of children ICPs can care for, we can expect the following. And Ontario families will lose access to approximately 140,000 daycare spots. Based on population data from StatsCan, the number of children under 24 months that require the care of ICPs in Ontario is approximately 212,500, and that's using a conservative estimate of 50%. Adding providers' own children into the equation results in an additional loss of approximately 63,000 spaces. In addition, the introduction of full-day kindergarten and senior kindergarten leaves 70,000 ICPs to care for approximately 100,000 children between the age of 24 and 42 to 48 months to care for. That averages to 1.5 child per provider. At an average of 3 children or fewer in care, many providers will be forced to shut their doors as their businesses will no longer be financially viable. This will, of course, lead to an even greater shortage of care. This scenario doesn't apply only to ICPs. The truth is that since the implementation of full-day kindergarten, even agencies are feeling the pinch. fewer and fewer agency providers are able to fill their spaces due to the combination of the two under restriction, inclusion of their own children and full-day kindergarten. Many are leaving agencies and becoming ICPs as a result of that. Parents will face a hike of 30 to 40% in daycare fees to make up the shortfall of income to providers. There will be no improved oversight. Providers will lose an average of between $12,000 to $20,000 of family income per year through the involuntary reduction of spaces or by being coerced to work for a licensed agency. Providers who are required to shut their doors because their businesses are no longer financially viable will be facing an unemployment rate of 7.1%. Parents who are already struggling financially may choose to give up work as the increase in daycare fees will negate their take-home pay. The majority of those who will be forced to reconsider working outside the home as a result of this bill, of course, will be women. In short, rather than making child care in Ontario safe, affordable and accessible, Bill 10 will make child care in Ontario far less safe and accessible and certainly more expensive. These racial proposals are not only counterproductive to the health, safety and well-being of our children, but also playing with the livelihoods of tens of thousands of families in this province. If Bill 10 is intended to address this government's stated concerns regarding the overall safety and lack of oversight that exists for children in the care of ICPs, why does this government insist on addressing those concerns by reducing accessible and affordable child care by 140,000 spaces, rather than providing an individual licensing system that includes all home daycare providers? Instituting such a system would maintain the choices parents demand, ensure that government-regulated health and safety standards are met, allow for inspections, and eliminate the wait list for subsidized care. Why has the ministry tossed out the suggestion of a provincial registry or licensing on the opinion of a single consultant from an Ontario college who declared it would be too expensive, or that it would, and quote, create a false sensitivity of security for parents? How does licensing individuals differ from licensing agencies? The ministry also expressed concern about staff overload and caregivers going underground. Is this the ministry interested in safety or budget? If there are concerns about providers going underground, we must absolutely question the bill's proposed changes to the ratio and number of children ICP can care for. Given that this bill, if passed, will eliminate 140,000 daycare spaces in Ontario, there is no doubt this bill will create an underground market. Not only will those underground daycares be impossible to oversee, its social activities such as library, playgroup and park time will be eliminated as the providers will not dare to take their children to public spaces. We urge this government to reconsider the proposed changes to the ratio and number of children independent child care providers can care for, and that it provides a licensing system and a regulating system for all home daycare providers. And that's where I wanted to now go into, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to actually give you some examples of some of the letters that I've seen that have come into me. I have a pile of them here right now, and there's probably like 5 times as many more in my office. And I'd also ask if any of the opposition members, any of the government members, or the third-party members wanted to have an opportunity to read these letters, or they wanted to maybe use them in some of their debate. Fine, and of course, I'll spray them to my
own. There's 3 or 4 that are just absolutely unbelievable to think that we're going to rush through a bill like this. So here's one example, and these have all come in the last just this week, since they found out the government was moving forward with Bill 10, and they want to probably they'll end up time allocating the bloody thing, but Bill 10 is of great concern to me as a home daycare provider. The numbers are just incomprehensible. When parents are looking for care for their child, it is highly probable that the child is under the age of 2 years. Maternity leave is for 12 months. If the numbers are passed as proposed, there will be a crisis in daycare. The town I live in has 2 centres. The rest of care is provided by loving, smart home care providers like myself. We had 1,000 plus babies born in our community last year. Where does our government propose that these children go? I can guarantee you that there are not that many infant spots in the 2 centres. To add my school-age child into the numbers is also ridiculous. She is 4, she is in school all day. Why should a school-age child take away from my numbers? Having 2 under 2 is also not possible. It is so much easier to plan a program for kids the same age. It is safer. I can make sure that my daycare space has appropriate toys with pieces not too small. Again, with so many babies in our town, this ratio would mean I would have to shut down. I cannot run a business and pay my bills with only 3 paying kids in my care. This would mean my daycare families would be scrambling to find care in a town there is already a shortage of care. I would be scrambling to find a job and care for my kids. It is a horribly short-sighted bill that really needs to be thrown out. And the more I see the bill, I completely agree with this lady. Reducing our numbers as responsible care providers is not the answer. Insist providers have their CPR first aid, insist they have a police check. But to reduce the numbers and put an age on them is not going to solve any problems. If someone is a bad provider, it is not going to matter if they have 5 kids or 1 kid. And I am just one of many, and that is signed. I'm not going to mention her name in the thing, but it's a daycare provider. I want to also point out on a couple of others here. And here's this is coming from Deb's home childcare and I'm not sure where the exact location is. But anyhow, Deb has wrote in her note here, as you are preparing for today's opening speech, and I want to point out that 80% of families have chosen their independent childcare provider not out of desperation or lack of available with providers who work for an agency They have chosen to place their children in our care after visiting several centres, agency homes or other independent provider homes, and finding the best match for their parenting and child care needs. The 80% speaks volumes. Parents want choice and they want the best for their child. Agencies have struggled for years to maintain clients and employees, and I believe they have billions of dollars to gain from further restricting our client base and opening up theirs. Instead of evening the playing field, they are doing their best to make it to their advantage, not for the safety of the children, as they claim, but to their pockets. If the figures that are being reported are correct, and they gained only 50% of the 823 children in informal care arrangements, they would see $1,604,850,000 in revenue per year from these clients, and at a cost of over $1 billion to pay for business owners like myself. I arrive at the figure based on what parents in London, Ontario pay: $43 per day to place their child in an agency provider's home, and providers themselves are paid $28 per day in compensation. Multiply that by 15, by 5 days a week, equals $75 per child, times 52 weeks is $3,900 per year, times the conservative 50% of the 823,500 children in unregulated care arrangements. It is obvious to me that someone is pushing this through for profit and not for the safety of our children, adding additional spaces for agency providers and waiving the safety rules they are implementing with the clause, and they can further reduce these age restrictions in the future, only tells me that they are looking at profit for their businesses and not safety. Ontario needs to look closer at other provinces' registration and licensing systems, as working for an agency is not the answer for Ontario's home child care providers, parents, or the children who require care. Thank you again for speaking on our behalf. That's another one, Mr. Speaker. I have one more, and then I want to make some comments before I turn it over to Ms. MacLeod. I am an independent daycare provider and a mother of 3 young children. I have concerns over the proposed Childcare Modernization Act, also known as Bill 10. Since September 2007, I have provided a safe, loving, and educational daycare program to children between the ages of 10 months and 9 years old in Old Ottawa East and in Alta Vista. When I first started my daycare, my own 2 older children were 6 months and 27 months. 2.5 years later, I had my 3rd child. The proposed changes would mean that I would have never been able to financially open up my doors, as I would have been able to only look after 2 other daycare children. I contribute the huge amount of compassion and love that all 3 of my children have for little ones to them growing up in a daycare setting. I have always loved working with children. However, it was a close friend who approached me for daycare while I was on unpaid maternity leave that ultimately started my daycare. From there, a community of families and friends has grown as my daycare families have become more than that. They have become an extension of my family. There must be oversight in home daycare to ensure compliance and safety. However, the drastic proposals are going to be drastic to childcare accessibility in Ontario. Many home daycares like my own would lose spaces. Many would have to close. Others would never open in the first place. The Coalition of Independent Childcare Providers of Ontario is suggesting that as many as 140,000 spaces may be lost due to this bill, representing approximately 40% of the children currently in independent childcare providers across the province. Bill 10 provides that the independent childcare providers, such as myself, become affiliated with childcare agencies, which would be a significant portion of our take-home pay for no benefit. The agency promises to provide middleman services and places people in my care, when in fact I attract all my clients through word of mouth and have no need for placement service. The estimated cost to my business runs under an agency as proposed through Bill 10 is up to $10 per child per day, representing $300 per week, or a grand total of $15,600 per year, with the new proposal of 6 daycare children in my care. Under the proposed rules, I would have to count my 4-year-old son, who is only home for 2 hours at the end of the day. I would have to put him in someone else's care at the end of the day so that a full day spot would not, a daycare spot would not disappear. This is absurd. Let the independent daycare providers become licensed for a reasonable fee and have unscheduled inspections plus mandatory first aid, CPR training to improve upon the safety within daycares. The current DNA already has provisions for maximum numbers allowable in home daycare, which I've always abided by. So at the end of the day, I love my job. I hope to continue it for many more years to come providing and can financially afford to do so. Please make changes to this bill so that the excellent, loving, home-independent daycare providers can continue to be successful and daycare spots will not disappear in Ontario. And that's signed by a lady from the city of Ottawa. So, Mr. Speaker, what I'm getting at here, you can see that there is much opposition to this bill from people who have never been consulted about on the bill. Now, what does that sound like? Do you remember something else in the last couple of years? The Ontario College of Trades, same thing. The citizens of Ontario, the tradesmen in Ontario were not consulted. The people that were behind the Working Families Coalition, that's who was consulted. Not the tradespeople of Ontario. And now they're paying the price. And I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, it's bothersome when I hear the minute the Premier say, in a quote, based on the success of our first year of the College of Trades, I will do a review of it. Talk about an oxymoron. Okay. Really, the College of Trades has been a disaster, and you're going down the same road here with this bill. I'm going to repeat again before I turn it over to, are you ready to go, Mrs. McLeod? Okay. So I see you talking to the other lady. So what I'm getting at, Mr. Speaker, is we are prepared to fight hard for the independent daycare providers in Ontario. And at the end of the day, they have the government. They're like, some of them can be like trained seals and vote on everything, or some of them can stick up for the actual people that they represent in the province of Ontario. One of the things, Mr. Speaker, I've asked over and over again, and we'll continue to ask in questions, and we'll continue to ask over the next over this debate, is to have open and transparent committee hearings when it does go to committee in the winter recess. We will work diligently with you. We will do the very best to make sure we get the very best bill here. Remember, these are our children. They are the most prized possessions we have. Our children, our grandchildren, everyone here who has children or grandchildren knows how valuable they are to us. We don't want anybody not in good daycare if they require it. But we want the daycare to be fair and transparent. We want all daycare providers to have a fair shot at doing their job and earning a living. We don't want to put 140,000 eliminate 140,000 daycare spaces. That's what this bill will do if we carry it through. I don't expect the minister, in her answers to Mr. McLeod in the last couple of days, I didn't hear any, I'm not even sure she knew what we were talking about, but I can tell you we will continue this battle. And I will continue this battle on behalf of all those little babies and all those young men and women that have children that want to have proper daycare service in the province of Ontario. So thank you very much, and with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. McLeod. Okay? Thank you.
The member